Hello, my name is Reggie Miller. I'm the Global Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at McDonald's. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Hopefully, you're enjoying the conference thus far. What I'm here to talk about today is not only the importance of integrating diversity into your business practices, but also specifically the work around supplier diversity as well. Now, here at McDonald's, our work in diversity, equity, and inclusion has spanned decades. It goes back to the 80s and 70s before it became something that's been avant-garde like it has been in the last 5 years. But there was an opportunity for us to continue to grow that in a way that is substantial, in a way that really impacts our global system around the world, and in a way that really ensures that it's integrated into the business. And so I'll spend some time today walking through all of those points and also to touch specifically on the work that we've done in the supplier diversity space as well. Now, I joined McDonald's in November 2020. And so if you go back to 2020, there was a lot of things happening in the environment. Obviously we're suffering through a global pandemic and the impacts of that. We were all working from home, working remotely, trying to figure out how to engage and keep a culture going in our respective organizations. We were reeling from the impacts of the several murders that took place that year between Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. And there was civil unrest in the streets as people had their reaction to that and took to those streets. But what was also happening, especially in the business community, was that several companies, many companies, went out and made public statements in regard to how they were going to change their efforts around DEI. And so as I joined McDonald's from my former company, VF Corporation, the focus with my team was to really think through not only how do we meet the environment of today, but also prepare McDonald's for the environment of tomorrow. And so that started with our allyship to accountability strategy, our diversity strategy, which we launched early last year. And that strategy is focused on three main points. First, how do we represent the communities that we serve? Now, as I started off with, my title dictates that I'm in a global job. So when we think about the communities that we serve, it's not just what we do domestically here in the US, but also what we do, what that looks like from an international perspective. And we're in 119 markets outside of the US. The second pillar of our strategy is focused on accelerating cultures of inclusion and belonging. And obviously, as we've been in this remote work hybrid environment, building and maintaining and sustaining company culture has been a challenge that all companies have faced. And I'm not saying, of course, that we have all of the answers, but we've tried to put some things in place in order to address that, which I'll talk about here in a second. And then the third thing is how do we dismantle barriers to economic opportunity? And this is one of the ones that I'm really excited about and really keys into our supplier diversity work as well, because it really allows us to ensure not only of the integration of DEI into the business, but also for respective communities to begin to eliminate those things that might keep them from growing generational wealth within their communities, within their families, and allow more opportunities for them to take advantage of those cases moving forward. And we're really serious about the role that McDonald's can play both, once again, domestically and globally in order to help do that. So those are the three pillars of our strategy that we launched, but there is nothing when you think about a strategy without metrics. And so what I want to do is maybe take some time to walk through exactly what that looks like, and then circle back specifically on the supplier diversity piece, as that is the essence of what I plan to talk about today. And so as we thought about those three pillars, represent, accelerate, and dismantle, we knew that they would come to life in how we address the business. And so we identified 5 key stakeholder areas in which this should come to life. The first, and I think probably the most obvious one, is with our employees. And so how does not just the diversity piece come to life, but the equity and inclusion piece come to life from an employee perspective? And we've done a ton of work, both once again, domestically in our corporate offices around the world, in order to make that come into place. And not necessarily just what we do in our offices, but also how that goes all the way down to restaurant level and really driving inclusion in our restaurants, the core of our business as well. But I did mention accountability being a key pillar of our approach. And so the accountability that we put in place for our senior leadership team is that 15% of their compensation is tied to their efforts to support our diversity and inclusion efforts and really champion our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And we rallied that around 4 key metrics. The first 2 are representation goals, and the second 2 are indices. So I'll actually start with the indices first. And so we do a poll survey and engagement survey every year, and we set particular targets for what we want that poll survey results to come back at. But the second piece about that is our inclusion index as well. So a measure of how people feel included. Remember my second pillar, accelerate cultures of inclusion and belonging. And we set targets for what that should look like as well. The 2 representation goals are focused on how we're growing women in leadership roles. And so at the senior director and above level, our goal is by 2030 to get to 50% representation, so gender parity, and by 2025 to get to 45% representation. And we set specific milestones every year in order to reach that goal. And then for underrepresented groups here domestically in the US, we have a goal to reach 35% by 2025 as well. And every year we do a measuring stick against all 4 of those key metrics. And then once again, depending on how we progress or not, then we judge our senior leadership team on that. The second key stakeholder group that we're focused on is our franchisees. Like many people do not know that McDonald's is over 90+% franchised, not only once again domestically, but around the world. And so the opportunity to truly have our franchisees, our owner operators, and represent the community that we serve is an important thing. Now, our owner operators do a ton of work in the community to ensure that we're embedded in those local communities, once again, domestically and around the world. But the idea that we need to create additional opportunities for Black and Brown people to have ownership of restaurants and be part of this system is a huge component of how we're going to move forward. So last December, we launched a $250 million initiative over the next several years to really increase the number of registered applicants from diverse pipelines to become owner operators at McDonald's. This opportunity for generational wealth cannot be understated, because what happens in the McDonald's system is someone comes in as an owner operator, and then their children come in as owner operators, and sometimes they have organizations together and sometimes they split apart, and then even the next generation of children carry on the family business, and that's what it ends up being, is a family business. And we want to make sure we have every opportunity for maybe communities who normally or oftentimes don't get the chance to own a situation like that, to gain those opportunities. I think it's such an important part of ensuring that we're not just embedded in the community, but we're providing those opportunities for those entrepreneurs out there as well. The third part, which I'll talk about briefly here and then circle back to, is really focusing on our supplier diversity efforts. And we call the supplier diversity business diversity here within McDonald's, so our business diversity efforts. And we split that into 2 different ways. The first is how we growing spend with diverse owned suppliers. McDonald's, once again, has been doing the work in supplier diversity for 30, 40 plus years. But there is an opportunity for us to do it in a more comprehensive and targeted way. What I would also say is, as we think about supplier diversity, is that it's not just focused in on those companies that provide, pork or commodities to McDonald's. We look at supplier diversity across all aspects of the business. So any third party who is engaged with McDonald's, be it an outside counsel, be it a consultant, be it whomever, would be integrated into that and how we engage with diverse spend there. And so we have a couple of metrics focused in on what we're doing around supplier diversity that I want to highlight. The first is just the overall spend goal. And so our goal was to reach 25% spend with diverse owned suppliers by 2025. We set that goal, but I'm excited to say, and we were able to announce in our annual report, our first annual report this year, that we actually reached that goal 2 years early. So we've actually already exceeded 25%, and now we're in the process of setting new goals to reach by 2025. Um, but we also took it a step further as well, because we had to begin to segment out kind of what that looks like. And one of the ways in which we segmented that out is specifically with our marketing teams, our US marketing teams, who are looking to grow spend with diverse owned marketers and content creators as well, with a goal to reach 10% spend with specifically Black owned marketers here by 2024. And so we're not just taking a sort of a broad brush approach to what that looks like. We're looking at it in some very specific and targeted ways as well. And we'll continue to do that as we think that's such an important part of how we move forward. The second piece that I'm really excited about is something that we call our mutual commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. And that's a huge, huge part of how we continue to move the needle, because we have a really strong connection to our supplier community here at McDonald's. We call it our three-legged stool: our employees, our franchisees, and our suppliers. And we wanted to make sure that the work around diversity, equity, inclusion, and the advances that we're trying to make just don't stay within McDonald's. And so in July of last year, we launched once again, what we called our mutual commitment to DEI. And that mutual commitment is focused in on how do we move the needle together, driving DEI, not just at McDonald's, but within all the respective companies who supply work here at McDonald's. To date, we have over 350 plus companies who have signed on to that commitment, and they are all dedicated to being champions to diversity, equity, inclusion in their own respective companies. And just this July, just a couple of months ago, we had a chance to bring a cohort of them, about 100 of them together, not only to share best practices, but also how we can learn from each other to really move the needle in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're really, really proud of that work as well. And so I talked a little bit about employees. I talked a lot about franchisees. I talked even more about business diversity. And then the last two areas in which we think our DEI strategy can come to life is in our respective communities and as well with our customers. I'll start with customers first. And I talked a little bit earlier about how we grow the diversity sort of with content creators, marketers, and even behind the camera from a diversity perspective. But also we have to be really targeted in how we engage and tell our story in diverse communities as well. And so those efforts to ensure that not only are we engaging with those diverse marketers and content creators, but the output that we are putting out is really reflective of those communities is an important part of our strategy as well. And then finally, McDonald's has been doing work in the communities in the 39, 40,000 plus communities that we offer worldwide for a very, very long time. But how do we truly begin to integrate the work that we're doing in communities, and especially in diverse communities, into all the work that I've mentioned prior, is the big pivot and change that we've made here over the last 2 years. And so what you hopefully have seen and will see is a continued effort to ensure that the impact that we're having in diverse communities really resonate with all the work we're doing from a DEI perspective. And so I want to start there with sort of an idea and a clear explanation of our approach before I dig really truthfully into our supplier diversity efforts. Now, getting back to the spend part, 25% spend in business diversity is not a small feat. It's not a small feat at all. And in fact, the industry average is probably somewhere between 10 and 12%. And so one of the things that we've done to really ensure that this is resonating throughout the company is that we bring together a cohort. There's representatives from every corporate function that are a part of this cohort of leaders that we bring together to really talk through, what's on your agenda for this year, who are the third party suppliers or corporations or organizations that you're going to engage, and how can we ensure, whether it's part of the RFP process, whether it's part of the initial gauge, that you're engaging with diverse suppliers. This is a meeting that takes place for us quarterly, and it allows us not only to not only keep the idea around business diversity at the forefront, but ensures that, once again, internally there is some best practice sharing that takes place in regards to, hey, we met with this group, we can't use them, but maybe you can, depending on your type of project or the size of the project. A second thing that we do that really helps to drive the work, that I think is really important is, we're always looking for new diverse suppliers to engage with. And so, yes, we have someone who's been doing this work for us, but is there a new company that we could do? Is there a new way to, even from a business development standpoint, that we can engage? We don't quite have an accelerator program per se, but this idea of truly thinking of how do we help to close a gap, for diverse suppliers, and even truthfully re-looking at our processes, be it payment terms, be it whatever that can really help or benefit the diverse supplier, are ways in which we have done that as well. And so that business development standpoint as a best practice, that we just don't rest on our laurels. We just don't say, hey, we've been dealing with this company for 20 years, and so they're the only one who can do it. We're also continuously looking for new diverse suppliers that might be able to provide us either with some innovation or a way in which we can do things just a little bit differently. And that's important as well. And then the third thing I would say, as we think about the supplier diversity piece, really goes into how do we engage with our franchisees and our restaurant groups as well. Because the opportunity is, even at a local level, to engage with diverse suppliers is a really important part of that piece. And so we're constantly consulting with our owner operator groups to really figure out kind of what that means and how we can best support and look after that. Because I think the important part of that is that only continues to grow our network. And then once again, when one owner operator group finds success with one, then they can share it with their co-op, and then maybe they're doing something for a broader group of 5, 10, 15 owner operator groups as well. But it just doesn't stop there. One of the things I mentioned is our mutual commitment to DEI a little earlier. And one of the elements of that mutual commitment, beyond just are they increasing their representation, are they training and developing within their organization around DEI, but there's also a spend component as part of that as well. So to say, hey, you are a supplier for McDonald's, what is your spend, tier 1 and tier 2 spend with diverse suppliers as well? And so for us, really setting an expectation that not only should we be spending with diverse suppliers, but you should as well. And what does that look like is a key and critical component of how we move that needle forward. And so the idea that we can have this sort of ripple effect within the industry and within our supplier groups around how to really drive DEI is a central component of how we move the needle there. Now, I've said a lot in the last 20 minutes in regards to not only McDonald's overarching strategy, but also the key components that really help drive business integration around DEI as well. I hope for all of you who had a chance to hear my brief talk today, it either sparks some ideas of things that you are already doing and doing well with your respective organizations, or maybe there's some things that we're doing that maybe could be something that you can benchmark against and use within your respective organizations as well. I think the key component, and no different than me talking about our mutual commitment, is that there's something that we all can learn from each other in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. However, if it's only focused on the employee side, if it's only focused in on how we move the needle, and although, once again, creating cultures of inclusion is highly important, but that integration is the business is also very, very important to this work as well. Because what we're trying to do in the work of DEI, what we're trying to do in the work of supplier diversity is create sustainable programs that will live beyond my time at McDonald's or your time at your respective companies, because it's just so embedded to the ways of working at your organization and the way that we do business. Because that is how you really drive sustainable change. That is how you really dismantle those barriers to economic opportunity in diverse communities. And that is really truly how you move the needle in a way that allows for DEI to shine in your respective organization. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. The team has put together an amazing array of speakers and guests. I hope this was very beneficial once again to you in some way, shape, or form. I'm really excited to attend the rest of the conference as well, and look forward to seeing you at respective events that we have around the couple of days. But I'll just close by saying, and maybe I'll just close with a bit of a challenge, and that is, regardless of whether you are from a diverse community or you're an ally to a diverse community, take a second and think about how you are demonstrating being a champion for inclusion in your everyday work. And so whether that is, and really take things that you learn from this conference and apply them back to your organization. So oftentimes we go to conferences and people say, how was it? And we say, it's good, it was great, and we move on, but not really truly apply the things that we learned there. And so I hope this is the first start to that. And I know there'll be many more with the agenda that we have for this conference. And so with that, once again, I'm Reggie Miller, Vice President and Global Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at McDonald's. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.